Hello, so I've got a real quick one for you today. My video on how to write a melody was meant to be a quick one to kind of set the precedent that not every video on Patreon here is going to be super long. I want to make a bit of a variety, and there will be some months when I am going to be a bit too busy to do a super long epic video that has got all this editing and stuff going in. So I wanted to share some sort of insights and stuff that I've picked up over the years, and hopefully this won't take very long. And today is all about creating stereo width. I've got a mono audio file and I want to make it sound a little bit fuller and a bit wider. And there are a couple of ways that we can basically fake doing this. I wouldn't say that it's fake because it's still a valid way of hearing something in stereo, but it's not like a true stereo where there is a left channel and a right channel. As you can see, I've got a composition which I'm working on for the new album. Here is the chorus. But there's something that I really want to draw your attention to, and I'm sure you've noticed it already, but this shaker here is just sounding a little bit shit. So I figured this would be a good example to work on to demonstrate how we can take this mono audio sample, which is sounding a bit lifeless, and give it a bit more presence in the mix. There are plugins in Logic to help you achieve this, but I'm also going to show you the ways of doing it if you're working in a DAW that doesn't have these plugins. The first is to use sample delay, which if I go to delay, here it is, mono to stereo, and this is the left channel and the right channel of an audio track, which if you hear two identical signals in the left and the right ear, that is the same as hearing a mono signal in the middle, like our brain perceives that the same. But if we introduce a tiny imperceivable delay to one of the channels, so the left one is coming in at the same time as it was, but now the right is coming in ever so slightly later, our brain perceives that as being a stereo image with two different sounds coming at us. And it's an interesting phenomenon, but if I bring this down to 0 here, and then introduce a little bit of delay to the right channel as we listen to this, it sounds now like we're listening to a stereo recording. If I keep going, however, the delay is now such that we're hearing it as two separate sounds entirely. If you don't have this plugin, the other way of doing it is to duplicate this track, duplicate this file, and then what I'm going to do is, once Logic has decided to actually do that for me, is move this a tiny bit, which gives us the same effect. But what I need to do now is pan this first track all the way left, and this other track all the way right. Though in this case, actually what I would recommend if you are in this situation is rather than just moving the same audio file, split this file in half and do that, because now we are hearing two individual files in the left and the right. And this is actually now a true stereo versus like a fake stereo. The next method involves using a similar principle of making two versions of the same audio file essentially for each ear. But instead of working with timing, we're now going to work with EQ. This is underneath imaging, and then it's called stereo spread. This splits the audio frequencies of the left and right channel to the left and the right ear, depending on what it is. In this default patch, you can see that this is going to the right side, this is going to the left, etc, etc, etc. The trouble with this file is that this is a very high frequency file. In fact, I've even put channel EQ on it, which cuts it off completely below 6,000 hertz, meaning that all of this stuff down here, all the way to 6,000 hertz is about here on here. So everything here is not doing anything whatsoever because there is no audio signal. So using this control here, I can bring this up like that. Now this is splitting like insanely small amounts of frequencies, left then right, then left then right. Let's have a listen to how that sounds. Sounds a little bit weird, doesn't it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this order down, and this is just going to reduce the amount of splitting that it's doing. This is kind of basically the same as just having it on the default, but it's a little bit of a tidier way of doing it, and you know exactly what's going on. I might bring this up. and back down again. That might be an interesting way of doing it. If you don't have a stereo spread plugin or equivalent, what we're going to do again is duplicate this track, duplicate this file. It's at this point that I would again suggest moving it slightly, but let's just say you don't want to do that. What I would then do here is move this channel right, this channel left as before, but then I would EQ these differently. So this channel here, let me just bring this EQ up maybe a little bit more. I might leave it as is perhaps, put that off to the right. And this channel here, what I'm now going to do with this one is I'm going to bring this frequency down because we're already hearing that in that channel there. We don't want to hear it twice. Bring this low cut down, bring this up. I might even just do this like that. And now let's have a listen to this. Now that sounds like we've got a kind of lower frequency, bigger shaker in the left ear, and then a higher frequency, smaller shaker in the right ear. But another way of doing this, which is quite clever, and something I only recently discovered, if I delete this second track again, I'm going to put this EQ back here, but we're going to keep these frequencies here in. Over here, I need to make this track stereo, which is now two separate signals that are exactly the same, so it's still effectively a mono track and still sounds mono. But now what I can do is, with Logic's channel EQ, is if I add another one, same plugin, but this time create a separate sounding EQ. So as if I was working on a completely different track, I'm just going to boost the frequencies here, reduce these ones to create a separate sound, let's say. But I'm going to go down to this button here that says processing stereo, and I'm just going to make this left only. This channel EQ is now only working on the left hand side. And that creates the same effect as duplicating the track and panning it hard left and hard right. So far we haven't really utilized the pan knob, and this is going to do that. So under modulation, I'm going to go to tremolo. The idea of this plugin is to modulate the volume of the track to recreate the technique of tremolo, which in string playing is going like that with the string bow really quickly. This just does it by using gain, and we can see it visually here. I'm going to go to a different track to demonstrate this actually, because it's impossible to show you with the shaker. And the rate of this is 1/4 note. So if I play this track without any on, this is how it sounds as standard. And if I now add this tremolo in, and adjusting the rate, we can get different effects. But if I now move this to, let's go with 1/8 and adjust this phase, what we've done here is we're now changing the volume of the left and the right channel at different times. Now, rather than creating a sort of dun 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 effect, which happens when we bring the volume down of both channels at the same time, if we bring down the volume of the left channel but then leave the right one up and then swap like this, this creates an altogether different effect. Our brain is fooled into thinking that it is going from left to right to left to right to left to right. So now let me go back down to the shaker track and add another tremolo plugin. I'm going to increase the rate to 1/8 and I'm going to turn the smoothing down. So rather than it kind of going like this on each side, it's going like that. Very visual demonstration, this. Now it is less obvious what is happening, it just sounds like we've got a stereo signal. I'll decrease this to 1/4 note. You can kind of hear what's happening again. And I might just round off the smoothing a little bit. And now for the final touch to make it as realistic as possible, let's bring the depth down so it's not doing as much volume. Back there, I'll disable it. And there we go. 3 ways to make a mono signal sound stereo. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the slightly shorter format. I'm sure there'll be more tips and tricks like this coming in the future. And I will be endeavouring to post one video on the first Friday of every month. except if the month starts on a Friday, in which case it will be the second Friday that month. But yes, that'll do for now. I'll see you when I see you. Goodbye.